What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about this utopia, you made it moment, and how to get out of that kind of stumbling block, how to get out of that mental masturbating of this future carrot or whatever, this striving. It's something I've experienced a lot of in like the music business. You know, I've been doing music professionally for over a decade, and the area that I've like kind of occupied in the music business is like music publishing, which is different than like most people might think when it comes to music. They're like familiar with bands selling like albums and like touring and merchandise and shit like that. This area of the music business is about licensing, so TV placements, movie placements, video games, YouTube, all this kind of shit where you're trying to make money and need some background music or whatever. That's the kind of shit I was into. Still am on some level, I still do all that, but like the difference is like the mindset of like, well, if I just got a new movie placement, then the you made it future, this imagining this entirely different reality just about, where once I achieve some external event, then my internal world will dramatically shift. And maybe for people that haven't had as much experience, like actually going for a goal, achieving it, realizing it didn't create this you made it moment, then you have this imposter syndrome and everything else. For those that haven't ventured that far into that, that can be very tempting, especially when it comes to manifesting, law of assumption, law of attraction, all of that kind of shit, where it's like thoughts create things. There is a lot of truth in that, but so do your fears and negative beliefs and assumptions. Those also create scenarios and events in your life, and they already have. You can only go so far as your own life right here, right now, to look at what your consciousness actually is, because your life is an exact replication of that. And so to really make any type of meaningful change isn't in spending the present moment in this you made it future, this, well, if I just had, if I just sold 1,000 more units, then I will feel like a success, or then I'll feel a certain way, or then all this like baggage that I'm holding on from childhood will just disappear. All that kind of shit. And I see it all the time, and like just over and over again. It was like, well, I tried imagining a scene and living in the end of this you made it utopia future, but then I'm confronted by all this fear and all these limiting beliefs and everything else, and it's like, yeah, because we are always manifesting. It didn't just start when you started to get awareness of this. It's been going on the entire time that you've been alive. And so you got no further to look than connecting the dots, looking backwards why events happen, checking the mental correspondence, and like a lot of times you'll realize it's like, oh shit, that was a fear of mine, and unconsciously it manifested, by impressing the subconscious mind with those thoughts and beliefs, those two things, not meaning to, but by feeling that energy of fear, it basically planted that seed, which then just through a bridge of incidents then manifested this worst case scenario. Well, a lot of times the unenlightened will look at the what happened and go, well, I don't want that to happen again. So you double down, and not realizing that the fundamental error was in mind, or looking at the outer world. And then instead of like, oh, I need to make any type of inward change, then it's like constantly, I got to control and manipulate the outside world, which so much of people's just own manifesting is to soothe their own fear versus living in an end where fear is an illusion. Big difference. It's like, am I going to constantly just be reactive all the time to what my SP's doing, or what my finances are doing, or what my health is doing? Or am I going to lead the manifestation by taking new action, by walking in faith, by whenever I'm feeling these fears, looking at that as an undesirable story, that in the present moment you can start telling yourself a new story. So much of the unconscious thinking that's going on is just not realizing that you are a powerful child of God, that when you think about things like that and contemplate and imagine and use this the gift of mind, that it actually has a correspondence. That the unenlightened state has no comprehension of that, and it's constantly blaming others because of it, not taking responsibility or ownership. It's always the they that's doing it. This, whatever the they is, listen, was like everybody's got a they. Some people have like, look at the elites, they're the ones like with these godlike attributes that are pulling the strings of society and culture. It can't just be the citizens. It can't be just the normal person on the street in your town that has these fucked up beliefs and this unconscious behavior and just living in fear and states of hell and torment. Couldn't be your neighbors. It's got to be this they that lives thousands of miles away that you can consciously choose to not even put any type of attention or put any type of like support in that system, which is something I've experienced, personally. It's like, as somebody who's does their own thing, doesn't have a boss, has got a handyman business, got a music business, there's very little that you need to be doing that involves any types of unconscious bullshit. Oh, Mike, during the pandemic, my employers forced me to take a vaccine. It's like, what? It's like, from my perspective, as somebody who is like took the leap into faith of like, I don't need to be working for some Fortune 500 that just wants me to fucking get medically raped to have a fucking illusion of security working for them. When ultimately God is my provider and God is your provider, and ultimately it's the stories in which you're impressing into awareness that really starts to demonstrate your faith, and not having this faith of like, oh, I'm going to sit here and imagine a world where nothing ever happens to me. Instead of like that stumbling block too, which is I feel like as an illusion, where it's like you're looking at, because why it's an illusion is because if you're in a fearful state, any outer event that happens, you're going to respond hysterically to it, even though it's like at bare minimum neutral. Or you can look at it with a higher perspective and see it entirely differently, where you're not responding and reacting out of fear and separation hysteria, but realizing that there's a correspondence between a belief assumption going on within me, that there's an opportunity to level up in my consciousness through maybe forgiveness. Maybe I'm seeing somebody outside of myself or whatever that's just demonstrating a lot of fear, limiting beliefs, hysteria, and they're coming to me to whatever, try to become healed on some level. That's one of the things I always have a hard time with, is like, I never know what people want from me. It's like, like, why are you telling me that? Like, some people will tell me the most fucking insane shit, and it's like, okay, what do you want me to do with that? Give me, pat you on the back or give you a hug? What do you want? What do you want from me? Is just, you want me to give you advice? You just want me to just be your therapist and just, it's like, listen to what you're saying? Because that's not really how I'm wired. It's like, I'm wired more so as like, okay, well, that is what it is. Let's either move forward or what? It's like, I'm not great when it comes to like ruminating on quote unquote problems, especially because I don't even really believe that problems are that big of a deal. As somebody who's like spent a lot of time like creating a business and just going for like music, which was like a big pedestal, there's so much where you get confronted with these limiting beliefs and assumptions that are a direct reflection of being cursed in your old mental narrative, just telling yourself this undesirable story about how, oh, it's so hard to do this and only a small percent can do it. And it's like, as someone who's out here in the fucking in the world, you have no competition. There's so much incompetence and just unconscious behavior that if you do about a C average effort and just show up and just every day just do what you say, hey, I'm going to be here at 10 o'clock, I'm going to get this shit done for you, and you actually do that, you'll be fine. It's like, most people are their own worst enemy. They either don't show up, they do a shitty job, they let their fears run wild, the worst case scenarios, they don't know how to solve problems, they have no mental strength, because they, that's part of, like, as far as I'm concerned, moving forward, is like, whenever you're faced with fear, it's an opportunity to grow your faith, start telling a new mental narrative that corresponds to the promises of God. Start thinking about the field of awareness in the present moment. It's like, do I want to be planting these seeds into awareness? oh, you know, this is going to be hard. Oh, I'm going to screw this up. Oh, what if this happens? Oh, what if that happens? Oh, what if I hurt myself? Oh, what if, you know, what if? And as you're sitting there pondering that, it's like you're just planting all them seeds into awareness, all this bullshit that you actually don't want to even happen to you. You're spending your energy, you're spending the gift of God, you know, this inner world, fixating on what you don't desire, what you don't want. And then, you know, if you keep on in that old man, that old woman, or that old creation that you are, where you're just constantly just ruminating on what you don't want, instead of focusing your attention on what you do want, which is just more harmony, peace, joy, love, you know, all the fruits of the spirit is what you want. You want that that shit, but you don't really know how to get it. We get confused and like try to get it through manipulating the outside world, not realizing that the outer is a shadow of the inner. So to really make any meaningful change in the outer, you actually change your consciousness first, becoming one with who you are in Christ by demonstrating who you are created to be naturally, effortlessly, and easily. Like a child doesn't need to be, well, let's imagine all these different scenarios and imagine how this is going to play out. A child is just in the moment. It's all perfect. It's all unfolding perfectly. That's a big difference. You know, it's something I get into all the time when it comes to like the law of assumption and manifesting and shit. Is like the comments people are like, well, you know, how do I do this? You know, it's like one of the ones I just seen was like, you know, every time I start to put on abundance, you know, I'm confronted with all these bills and obstacles and shit, and it's like, that's part of abundance. You got to flex it. You know, it's like you don't be abundant just by hoarding, but by giving and receiving. You know, it's part of like this flow. And so when you're confronted with some of these things, it's an opportunity to get quote unquote stronger, you know, really, and quote unquote is just get stronger, so that you're not looking at this shit as a problem. And as you know, steward what you have with the little, it grows. To make any meaningful change, you start where you're at, because where you're at is already a reflection of your consciousness. You're not going to go from $100 a day to like $1,000 in a day until you evolve your consciousness to, you know, let go of the guilt that might be there of like, you know, feeling guilty for like receiving that or whatever the fucking hang up is. There's so many little hang ups that can happen, like, oh, I'm not worthy of this, or I need to suffer, I need life to be hard, you know, all these kinds of bullshit stories. And you're the one that's like, you needs to be mindful of the stories that you're telling yourself. Is like, when it comes to like finances and abundance, it's like, are you putting on what God says is real about abundance? When the Bible says that our Creator is, for one, super abundant, also the source for abundance. You know, it's like, so is your mental narrative, well, you know, the money comes from just being a shifty, shady person and like manipulating people and lying to people and stealing it. I've heard, you know, lots of people like say that, you know, it's like, oh, you get money by being unethical and lying. Well, that's a limiting belief. You know, you can easily, you know, and some people might, you know, see that because they believe it. And again, this correspondence works both ways. It's non-selectively working. So if you believe that people make money by lying, cheating, stealing, worshiping Satan, being in the Illuminati, being whatever, you know, fill in the blank of whatever these beliefs are. Well, for you, that's what you'll see in the mirror of creation showing you what you believe. And the more that you see it, a lot of times then the trick is then, well, the more you see it, the more you believe it. So you double down on it even more. And what you actually want in that abundance, you are pushing away with this contrary belief. And so it's like you have to face all of these old beliefs that you've acquired through your life in separation, meaning you think that, you know, God is somewhere out in space, that the source for all these desires is somewhere outside of you, that there's all this competing forces. There's like, oh no, this is random chaos over here, and oh, you have to force it over here. You know, when it comes to like manifesting, it's about this trust that whatever happens, God's going to be true, and what God said is real. I'm going to stand in faith whenever I'm in fear, because the reality is, if you have a business, you have no idea where these customers are coming from. I don't care who you are, and you know how, like, well, you know, I'm projecting all of the sales data and all this kinds of stuff. It's like, okay, but without that spiritual help, who knows where these people are coming from. Now, I've experienced that in my handyman business so often, where I'll see like their addresses having these synchronistic numbers. They'll call me, and the duration of the phone call will be like a synchronistic number. I'll be, thinking about, these different maybe these spiritual concepts, and there'll be like a Bible verse on their wall in their living room that just answers that question perfectly. So much has like led me to just knowing that God provides, that it's not even a belief. It's more just like water's wet to me. It's just how it is. And there's not a fear, there's not a bunch of attachment to like, well, I need to imagine this ideal perfect customer and this ideal perfect job to do. I kind of keep it more loose of like, it'd be fun to just do some painting or just relax and whatever. Just allow that to penetrate into awareness, compared to, hopefully I don't get this, and I don't get a job like this, and I don't get something super exertive, and I don't get focusing on what you don't want. Whenever you're focusing on what you don't want, you're leaving this entire fucking thing of what you do want off the table, even though that is what you want. But you're going about it backwards. You're trying to get what you want by focusing on what you don't want, which unintentionally creates more of the fucking thing you don't want. It's part of the insanity of it. But, moving forward, it's not so much about like being stuck in your mind and stuck in thoughts in the present moment, which I feel like a lot of people in the manifesting crowd are into that stumbling block, spending the present moment rejecting what is for some hypothetical you made it future, mainly probably because they haven't had a lot of experience actually achieving and manifesting their desires and their dreams. But, from my perspective, someone's spent a decade doing that, realizing a childhood dream and being able to do it and everything else. It's like this idea of like success. So like, well, once you hit this dollar amount, then you're successful. Or once you do this event, then you're a success, or whatever it is. To me, success is just every day. Are you able to continue to do it? Are you continue to be able to do music? Are you continually, able to pay your bills for the month and do music or do your business and like have a surplus, and so to me, like success is like in the unfolding present moment. Are you doing something to get even more, to double up, to level up, all these kinds of things? Or are you chasing this imaginary future that's not real? Two entirely different things. Because if you're sitting there chasing, comparing, envying, all these kinds of things, you're focused again on what you don't want. And this whole spiritual walk is about switching that unconscious, what you don't want story, to your conscious, what you do want. Do you really want this thing you're imagining and spending the present moment in non-acceptance of? Or would it be better if you just got stronger and you could handle any of these fucking situations without sitting there freaking out and becoming hysterical? For me, it's better to not become hysterical and fearful and trying to manifest shit to soothe fear, versus living in a state where fear in itself is an illusion, and realizing there's nothing to fear, because there's only God that's real, and there's only law that's unfolding perfectly. There's nothing that's opposing God's will. Nothing. Part of like thinking there is part of the illusion, which creates fear, which then start spinning down in these cycles of like undesirable shit, what you don't want, scarcity, sickness, death, decay, worst case scenarios, all this kinds of shit, dangerous fucking bullshit, all this kinds of stuff. When you can start to today, right now, because you're already doing this, big moral of the story, you're already doing this. If you're spending the present moment fixating on here's something to trigger all the truthers. Let's focus on what the Illuminati's doing. Let's focus on what the lying media is saying. Let's focus on how the fiat currency system. Let's focus on what the satanic cults are doing. Let's focus on the trans shit. Let's focus on, you know what this agenda is about, Mike? Well, you know what this agenda is about, Mike? And it's like, all of that shit, you're focusing your attention on the illusion, because it doesn't really even matter, because you're doing it. A lot of these triggered truthers are doing the exact same shit that these triggered fucking news whatever just addicts are doing. It's focusing on a small bit of creation that's been hodgepodge puzzle pieced together, and then making this broad assumption about, well, this is what reality is. This is, this is what life is. See what Bill Gates is doing. You see what Fauci's doing. Oh, you see what Trump's doing. You see what all these archetypes are doing. And then making some big broad realization, assumption or whatever, that life sucks, that Satan is in charge of the world, and you're just going to be a little peon all the fucking time, and that you just deserve to be flagellated and suffering, and getting the worst of creation, because for some reason God wants you to eat the scraps of the shit heap. Yeah, that's what your infinite intelligence wants for you. That's what love wants for you. It's like, again, let go of the complexity and convolution of the old story, your old ego kind of things, the old fucking satanic beliefs, all that kind of shit. Start looking at, how does a child think about life? Because we're supposed to become like children, quote unquote. Quoting the Bible. I think Jesus actually said that. You must become like a child almost, in your faith. Well, children aren't sitting there just mentally masturbating all the time with these hypothetical future moments or whatever. They're in the moment. They're just having fun. They're enjoying the unfolding now. And not having this doom and gloom, be hysterical, be very afraid. And it's like, not to say there isn't groups of people that would like nothing more than to eliminate a large portion of the population, and not that there's, and that's a symptom of this mind virus. But the thing of it is, the people that want that are unintentionally, unconsciously bringing that upon themselves. So see, if you're sitting there wanting a large portion of society to just disappear, to die, or whatever, be very mindful of what you're actually doing, because as you, what you give to another, you give to yourself multiplied. So you can do that if you want to fucking suffer and potentially fucking end up dying by wanting to do that to other people. You're really cursing yourself, because we're all one, we're all connected, and so instead of, again, blessing and curses, field of awareness does not give a shit either way. Either one mixed with faith in evil or faith in good, it'll happen, and that's just, you can bring that even further back. Faith in fear or faith in love. It's what we're doing in the present moment when faced with anything. Are you going to sit there and tell yourself a fearful, hysterical story? Or are you going to say, God is my healer, God is my supply, I don't need to worry about this. Oh, I just put on abundance mic, and now all of a sudden my worst case scenario is all manifested. It's like, yeah, because your old mind, the old programming in the subconscious, believe that shit. So that you have to overcome all of those thoughts and all those beliefs of lack, of, that God's not going to help you solve this problem, whatever it is. You have to face all of them things and let them go and renew your mind into a new story, because the dominant story is going to be what manifests. If your dominant story is fear, lack, I'm a victim, I have bad luck, things don't ever work out for me, God hates me, whatever the dominant story is that you have programmed into awareness, into the subconscious, your subconscious, to shift from that to who you are in Christ means facing those limiting beliefs, those assumptions. You can do it in mind before it manifests, but a lot of times it takes moving through the physical by taking these new actions. So for example, if you're in like scarcity and you want to start feeling more abundant and putting that on and start experiencing what you want, so being attractive instead of repulsive, the thing of it is, it's like, when you're abundant, you're not worried about paying for things. It's part of like the abundance is like being able to give without then having this hysterical story about now how all of a sudden you just lost, which is something that's very common. It's like if I gave somebody $50 and I was in this old state of mind, it's like, well, I just lost $50. But once you realize how things are connected, how that was an opportunity to flex your abundance, You didn't lose 50 bucks. Yeah, you might have gave somebody 50 bucks as an investment, but what you give to another, you're giving back to yourself multiplied. And you can have that belief. When I give, I get back times 10. So I didn't lose 50 bucks. I gained 500. I do that all the time. And it really lets go of a lot of those kinds of fears associated with spending money, because scarcity works both ways. It works in fear of like not having, but also when you do have, then there's fears of loss. You got to let go of both of those to really not be in this mental hang up about it, not be concerned about it, not to be worried about it, being content with what you have, realizing it's an exact representation of your consciousness. So to level up, you got to level up your consciousness. But you also have to level up your service, because money is a direct reflection of your service to others. Oh no, Mike, money is a reflection of how evil you are. It's like both of those are beliefs. That's your belief. That was my belief. Which one is more in alignment with biblical truth? What is more in alignment with what inner truth? That's for you to decide. But you can tell yourself exactly different thing in the face of it. If you're focused on service to others and money being a reflection of the value you share to another person, how well you did solving their problem, for example, how much you were able to give them love, either one, you can look at money as being reflective of that service, which then gets you out of like focused on the small me, the small self, and be able to have a lot less resistance and guilt, because you're realizing that, oh, I'm helping other people, this is helpful, etc., etc. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna bounce. I've been waiting for it to kind of warm up a little bit. I got some signs to go paint, and then I'm painting a house. I got a whole bunch of shit going on. It's like spring, and for my handyman business, it's like super abundant time, and it's like go time for the most part. Which it's like always want to share that with other people, because me personally, I always felt like working for other people would just be a fucking nightmare. And like, I haven't had like a boss, or it's like, if I don't keep this job, I'm totally fucked for over 10 years, a decade. I started really doing my kind of self-employment journey 10 years ago plus, a decade plus, so for me, there's all this momentum and shit where you're just trusting in the unseen very comfortably. I mean, it's like, it's why, for those I hear that are like stuck in these imaginal you made up futures where like you go from maybe being like scarce to like barely getting by to now super abundant, and like this maybe switch happen, whatever, and there isn't a consciousness shift with it. That's the other part of it. It's like, for you to really demonstrate levels of abundance, you have to demonstrate it first in mind. And so part of what our Creator does is we go through these bridges of incidents, these series of events that by taking new action, where you're not just reacting out of fear, but you're standing in faith, you start retraining your mind to align more with who you are in Christ, which then demonstrates that more and more without you, like, your conscious thinking. It's like you reprogram the subconscious. It is more like this. You become confronted with what you actually believe in mind. You choose to tell yourself a more biblically true story that's in alignment with what Jesus said, what the Bible said, what God said in these different external forms. But then you check that with the inner guide, which is the spirit within you, and you work that out. And as you do, the manifestation takes care of itself. The how it happens, yeah, that's in God's control. The action is in mind, but the action is also in, you have to let go of your old story. You have to change that dominant story through taking new action. Your body's an excellent example, where it's like you can be like telling yourself this story about how you're super unhealthy, you're not fit, you're not having good mobility, you have some disease, you have something to be afraid of, or whatever. Well, in this very moment, you start taking new action. If you're telling yourself how weak and pathetic you are, You can start telling yourself a new story by maybe doing some push-ups. Do 20 push-ups. And through taking that new action, you start changing that dominant story of like, no, I'm fucking strong. I can do 20 push-ups. You start convincing yourself that the opposite is true by taking new action. And then you start doing it. And then through changing your consciousness, you'll start to see your body reflecting that change, because your body's a reflection of mind. I've noticed that same thing in swimming, because I've been doing a lot of cardio work just to really just experience that, to be really lung and heart in shape was a goal, a desire of mine that I wanted to experience. And like with that, there's this like, oh, well, how long do you do it? How long do you do intense cardio for it to be a benefit? And for me, I got the answer to that through the doing, by actually doing it. When I get into the pool, for example, immediately it's like, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, how many, you get that bitching, that whining, that mental drama. It's like, oh, how many of these do I got to do? And then it's like, oh, then your heart just starts racing, and it's like, oh, I'm going to give myself a heart attack. You start telling yourself these negative stories, and it's like, no, I'm fucking strengthening my heart. I'm strengthening my lungs. I'm strengthening my body. And you start to plant those new seeds into the subconscious. And then as you continue to do it, I get a whole bunch of body resistance. It's almost like it's screaming out, just stop, just stop, just stop. And it's like, I don't give a fuck what you're saying. I'm going to continue to do this. So you're putting your new willpower, maybe, is your new, like, I'm doing this whether my body is going to be a bitch about it or not. And eventually you get to a point in just, I'm just going to keep doing laps. I don't care. Eventually that old narrative just stops. And it's like, I could just do this all fucking day. And once you get to that spot where it's like, I can do 15, 20 more laps, swim a mile. It's like, I could probably just swim a mile, 2 miles at the pace I'm going. It doesn't matter if my body is what it's saying. I'm going to do it regardless. And it's in that kind of just efforting and doing that you're actually training that new story. You got to switch it, and so it's like you start flexing your abundance by spending. You got to start flexing your health by taking these physical actions or whatever. But also in just trusting that infinite intelligence is the shaper and molder of your body. And you start planting those seeds into awareness through what you're thinking, the dominant story, and shifting that. Repent. It's a radical change of mind. Sinning is missing the mark. So if your mark is, I want to be healthy, fit, successful, loving, having a solid, harmonious family, all these kinds of things, any of those areas that are missing that mark, there's inner marks that you're kind of working on with you and your creator, that's the next thing. That's like the obvious weed in your garden that needs to be cultivated and trimmed and pruned and gotten out of there, so that you are without a bunch of resistance and efforting, but it's just happening. You're just experiencing more and more, everything is working perfectly. That's the ultimate realization, is that everything is unfolding perfectly. I don't have to really do anything. It's being done to me. If there's an action to take, I'll be inspired to take the correct action. All these kinds of things. It becomes more of an autopilot. Just like the worst case scenarios and the undesirable was on autopilot, you can renew your mind, reprogram it, and then that just starts running on autopilot. And as you're doing that, those seeds are getting implanted, and without a bunch of like resistance and drama, the life that you're living starts becoming more harmonious. It just automatically starts getting healed and resolved, and it's like not till it's done that you look at how like the bridge of incidents unfolded. You look at connected dots looking backwards, and it's like, oh, I see how infinite intelligence used that to do this, and then it strengthens your faith, and then you're not being so reactive to fear. You become strengthened. You can handle these different life situations without being a pussy and cowering and, oh God, oh, what am I gonna do? It's just like, okay, decisive decisions. I'm gonna do this, then this. I'm gonna listen to the Holy Spirit, and I'm gonna take action. I'm gonna ask God what to do. Whatever comes into awareness that resonates, I'm going to take that action. I'm just going to do that. And so it's a cooperative thing. It's not this like you made it future that a lot of people get in these stumbling blocks about, trying to, I feel like that's kind of like symbolic of death in a lot of different ways. Of like, well, my life is such a shit show. The only way I can experience heaven is just to fucking scrap everything and just die and start over. even though you can start to actually start over in the here and now by telling yourself a new story instead of just letting the dominant story of fear and hysteria just impress this awareness, which then doubles down and you experience more states of hell and what you don't want, and suffering and difficulties and all that kind of shit, versus seeking the kingdom and God's righteousness and all, and then experiencing all these things being added to you because you realize everything's a reflection of consciousness. And so with that being said, I think I'm gonna bounce. So I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. Appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. Donation link in the description. And until the next now, God bless.